Hello and welcome to the Mystical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Katie Soul, and I am so excited for the guests that we have with us today. But first, I wanted to share something really special with our podcast listeners. We've recently launched the Mystical Living Group Program. We have our first cohort already kicking off, and they're having the most epic transformations. The program is for women who want to create accelerated change in their lives, really radical change, and shift into a whole new frequency so that they can live their mystical life and manifest their deepest desires. We're offering our podcast listeners 30% off the group program, and you can use code podcast for that. And you can find all the details in the show notes. Without further ado, I welcome Courtney Meyers to our podcast. Welcome.
Hi, Katie. I'm so excited to be here today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. You have a really beautiful podcast yourself, and I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit about you and your story, and who are you really?
Who am I really? That's the $1,000,000 question. I've spent so much of my life, helping other people find their voice and showing up for as they are to help them really reveal themselves. And I wrote for television for almost 20 years. And it's really this has been a journey now to take that and helping other people find their voice to really apply it to my own life. And that's kind of where my podcast started. That's kind of where my business started. That's kind of what I am and what I do now. It's I am a self-exploration of finding my own voice and showing up authentically in my life as a almost 42-year-old woman who's struggling to do that, but I'm doing it while I'm helping others and I'm exploring that. So it's kind of like this mix thing of taking my past of bringing other people's voices to the world to starting to share mine and really show up as myself. And that's who I am. I'm a writer, I'm a mother, I'm a podcast host, but I'm really a seeker and a person who wants to find the truth and get to know who you are and who I am and who we all are on an authentic level and really allow us hold that space for us all to show up and be that and welcome it into the world. So that's kind of the gist, I would say, of who I am.
So beautiful. And I love your rawness and your authenticity and your vulnerability. And I would love to dive deeply into those topics today. How we unravel all of those layers, all the societal conditioning to show up in our most authentic power. But first, before we dive in today, we start every podcast with a moment or a few minutes to take that elevator ride out of the mind where the human self resides with the fears and the worries and the to-do lists and down into the heart where our divine self resides, where our intuition exists. And some people really want to feel into the body in that moment. So if you're ready, we can take a moment and gently bring our eyes to a close if you're in a place that it's safe for you to do so. You can rest your hands on your thighs and maybe just move them back and forth a little bit, feeling the fabric underneath you and just that gentle sensation of movement and touch as you feel into your own physical vessel, this beautiful body that you get to experience and inhabit and use and play with and change in this lifetime. And when you're ready, you can bring your hands to a gentle stop, just resting them on your thighs now. And here you can take a few deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And I want you to gently start to imagine tiny little version of you right at the top of your head. If you know where your pineal gland is, you can picture it, this little you right at your pineal gland, right in the center of your head. Sometimes for a visual, I like to use that little yoga pose emoji. And picture myself in this little yoga pose. And gently as we breathe, we're going to let that little you take the elevator ride down from the mind, letting go of the fears and the worries and the to-do lists, and descending into the heart center. From here, you're in the crystalline core of your own existence. You're cocooned in soft, white, opalescent light. And it's a womb-like atmosphere where you're safe and you're held. And you might see rainbows or unicorns or crystals. Whatever presents for you is perfect. And if nothing at all presents, that's perfect too. Just know that you are held in this cocoon as we deepen into our journey together today. And from here, we're in a state of calm, deep peace and presence. And when you're ready, you can let your eyes gently flutter back open and start to warm your hands and just place your hands over your heart center. Take a final deep breath here. Whew. And here we go. Let's dive in to authenticity and vulnerability. And oh my gosh, this seems to be the theme of season 2. We kicked off, and the day of our recording, we're actually launching season 2. And it's this raw, vulnerable episode with Philip Attar. And we just went places that I never expected to go online. Whenever Philip and I get together, we just sort of end up going there. And it really set the tone for this whole season. So we don't know exactly where we're going to be going today, but I know that it's going to be deep truth, deep vulnerability, and deep authenticity. So tell us, Courtney, as you host your own podcast, how have you been able to deepen into your truest, most authentic self through that platform?
Well, I think for me, the biggest gift has been the questions I've been able to ask myself and really like go deeper. You know, we think a lot of the times, I think when we start out on this spiritual journey, we think like there's a destination and we think we're going to like learn all this stuff about ourselves. But what I find, and you know, I talk to a lot of people and from a lot of different walks of life, and we go from, you know, the scientific side to the spiritual side, and we mix it all together. And what I'm realizing is just there's such a depth of knowledge and wealth, and like everyone has an idea of like how we really tap into who we are and what that looks like and where we're going. But what I'm realizing is like the well is so deep. There's no final answer. There's no final destination. There's no one way to do it. And so what I'm really learning for myself is just kind of like to feel into it. I think that's the biggest thing is to feel into what feels right for you. And every day that's kind of different. And realizing that we're these just constantly evolving beings. And there isn't a final destination. I think what I really searched, what I was looking for was like this answer of like what life was supposed to be, or who I was supposed to be, or where I was supposed to go. And I've had this revelation lately that there's no supposed to, there's no final destination, there's no answer. It's just this constantly evolving wheel of growth and self and change. And it's beautiful. It's scary, but beautiful.
Scary
It
but
really
beautiful.
is.
That feels
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Scary but beautiful. That feels like every day right now is just as you deepen into these new aspects of yourself and you're unlocking new keys and codes within, you're going to places that you never thought were possible. And I talk a lot in my group program about manifestation. And so often we think of manifestation as very linear. And while that's an approach to manifestation, you can have the vision board, you can want the red Jeep, when we're really working with high magic and we trust the flow, that divine flow, versus getting so focused on this thing that we want that's outside of ourselves or this final destination, we actually lose sight to the miracles that are available to us, the new patterns in the field, the signs, the synchronicities that just exist when we are deeply, deeply present. So tell me, how do you come into that deep trust, that deep presence, that deep knowing that what you, as a seeker, you're not
Yeah.
really seeking anything outside of yourself?
Well, I think the best thing that can demonstrate this for me is I lost my grandfather this last year, last
Mm.
April, and I was so close to him. So
Mm.
close to him. I mean, it's no secret. He's always was like, I'm his favorite. He was one
Oh,
of my favorite. It was kind of one
yeah.
of those things. We had a very, very special bond, and he was always my cheerleader. And
Mm.
literally this weekend, I looked at my husband and I said to him as we were driving, because I know you were talking about signs and I love signs. He speaks to me through license plates, and
Oh
his
my
number
gosh,
was,
the license plates are the best. That's like
I
a
love
big
them.
method of communication for me.
Always. And his number was 44. I see it everywhere. It's like everything is 44, 44. And just like I'm not even looking for it anymore. That's I think when we're
Yeah.
present, and it's just showing up.
Yes. Yes.
But what I said to my husband today, I turned to him and I said, "You know what is really weird?" And I don't even know if weird's the right term. It said, "Since Papa has passed, I feel closer to him than ever," which seems
Mm,
so counterintuitive. He's not
that's
here, but he is. He is so present in my life. And that
mm,
surrender and that just knowing, like, I feel him every single day with me. I
yeah.
feel more love from him than ever. And that's
Mm.
like hard to even imagine because he was like this bigger than life Italian man that was just over the top loving,
Oh.
So he had that personality and he was, very, very vocal about it. But it's so crazy to me that he has passed on and he's the first real close person to me that has passed on.
Mm,
And since he's passed, I really feel this deep, deep connection to him and to
mm,
spirit. And I really realize it. It's in those moments when I'm being present. He's just like there with me.
mm.
And being present is hard because I have a business.
You do.
I have two young kids, life is fast. We're going, we're moving, lots of things. And,
Yeah.
and I'm, as a seeker and an achiever and all those things, my mind is always in the present. It's like going a million miles a minute. But I welcome those moments when I feel him and he drops
Mm.
in. I mean, even you taking us through that moment at the beginning is like, I needed that. I don't do it enough. As I told you earlier before we jumped on the call, it's like, my moments of really dropping in are when I jump into the bathtub or when I'm writing. I
Yeah.
don't get those moments very often in my day to just sit still and be quiet. So
Mm.
that to me means so much when I can surrender to the moment. And I think driving is one of those things that allows us to do
Oh,
it. That's why maybe license plates are so connecting us to spirit is, you're driving.
probably.
I I don't even know if I'm present in that moment either because, you go into that meditative state when you're driving and you know where you're
Yeah.
going, but it's like just seeing that come and those signs. And that's when I know I'm really present. And that's when you can really feel the depth of the universe and the magic come in. And
Yeah.
I just welcome that. There's just like this warmth that comes to you, and it's just
Mm.
fleeting and far between, I find, in my busy life as a mom, which, Any moms
Yeah.
know that. It's really hard to go there. So when we can, it's just, I welcome it. And I just love the fact that I can tap in and be with him at all times. Yeah.
The minute you brought him up, I could feel his
I
presence.
know. He's
Oh my
so
gosh.
big. He's like,
So
I
big,
think
so
that's where my
warm, so
spiritual
loving.
connection, yeah, I think that's where my spiritual connection comes in too. Because I did, breathwork training years ago, and I was going through a lot at the time. And his mom, my great grandmother, came to me. Noni came in that moment, and I had this whole moment with her, and this warmth and this healing that came through. And I really tie my spiritual connection through that lineage. And so it's really amazing to me when we can pull that in. Yeah.
Totally. And it makes the concept of death feel a lot less scary too when we have this
Yeah.
multidimensional understanding that the person is they're leaving their physical body here on this earthly plane that we hang out on, but multidimensionally we can still communicate and often have, even you had a beautiful relationship, but for a lot of people they can even have a better relationship,
Yeah.
experience greater states of love when their loved one crosses over
Hmm.
to the other side,
Hmm.
which is so beautiful too.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I also wanted just to touch for a minute on why we start each episode with that moment, because it doesn't actually take that long, but we get so like caught in the middle of our
Yeah.
day and we're like, but you can do a practice like that in 2, 3 minutes.
Hmm.
And it's just building those intentional moments into our lives. And when we're driving or in the bath or automatic writing, those are like the meatier, doing breath work, like those are the
Hmm.
meatier, more, sometimes can be very mystical experiences. And if you're a busy mom listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have like 2 minutes. Like one thing I used to do a lot before when I was working in corporate America is before I got home, I had a
Hmm.
really long driveway. So I'd park at the end of the driveway and I would close my eyes just for 3 minutes and I would drop into my heart and then I would go into the house because in that state of mind, I was making that transition point from my
Hmm.
working day into my mom hat and being
Yeah.
present for those hours. It wasn't that much time I would have with my kids in the evening. And so I really wanted to make sure they could experience the full me and not like the hassled, hungry, exhausted version of me. And
Yeah.
so I think there's practices like that that we can build in even when we have chaotic and busy lives.
Hmm.
So tell me
Hmm.
a little bit, because you are a writer, tell
Hmm.
me about that process. Like, how did you tap into that? Was that something your whole life that you've been drawn to, or is it something in the more career oriented years?
It's interesting. So I've heard Steve Harvey say this now a couple of times, that we all have these gifts. And if something comes easy to you, then that is something that you need to like tap into and give to the world. And
Yeah.
now, like I said, almost 42, I'm just realizing that my writing is my gift. I didn't
Yes.
realize it. I thought everyone could write. And,
I
you know,
know. That's what we
I've
often
had,
think with our gifts.
yeah, I think it's second nature. And so I can remember back as far as like third grade writing stories. We had a little storybook nook where we would write stories. I remember getting this little typewriter where I learned to type really young. I love, like, seriously, I love my fingers on the keys. It's like, to me, it's like music. It's like playing the piano. There's something about it. Like I could just take
I love it.
notes all day, every day, because it's so soothing to me. It's meditative. Um, but writing has always been second nature to me. It's just come to me. I've always loved it. I've always loved reading. I've always loved the art of the story. And so I really thought
Mm.
it was something that everyone did. It was, yeah, I know. It's funny because my husband's like, "No, I don't do that." Or, other people will say, "Can you write this for me?"
Totally.
They're like, "How did you do that?" It comes to me naturally, but it is also a place where I channel. It's where I connect the most. And I always invite people to do that when you're looking to connect, is to journal and is to write. I actually shy away from it sometimes because I know how powerful it is when I do it. That there's this weird thing that we almost fear, like you were talking about manifestation. It's like we think we want the thing, but there's on a subconscious level, sometimes we almost fear what that means to get it. It's like we want the wanting as opposed to the receiving. And so even like for me, knowing this, being so well versed in this space, like I know that if I pull out my journal and my pen and I journal for 20 minutes for a week straight, I will manifest whatever I'm writing. I will, but I'm not doing
Totally.
it. I don't do it regularly. And it's like there's this underlying fear. So writing is super, super powerful. To me, it's one of the best ways we can connect. I push everyone to do it, even if you're not a writer. Like just write your grocery list over and over and over again. It invites in another dimension. But for me, it's always been this natural thing. It's just comes so easily. And I love the art of it, being able to weave stories together and how we can there's just so much magic in the words. Words are so important, and what we say and what we write. And I think what we write is stronger than even what we say sometimes because it's lasting. Think of everything that we've learned through our past. Like the written word sticks.
Yeah.
Jane Austen is one of my favorites of all time. How long ago was that? The Great Gatsby, we're still reading these things. They are life-changing pieces of art that stick with us, that don't go anywhere. And so I think writing is one of the most beautiful things we can do. I think it's one of the best gifts we can give to ourselves, even if you're not a writer, just to share your story. And when you write it down, there's something about the energy, moving that energy through the pen. I know our hands are connected to our heart is beyond anything. So yes, writing is a passion. It is a gift. It is something that has come naturally. And I love it. And that's where I can find myself getting the most raw and real. Even when I take my clients through the writing process, half the time they're cursing my name because I push them to go further, go deeper, because so often we only want to, write the list. This is what happened. Just tell it like it is versus like really understand where our feelings and emotions come to play. And when we can allow ourselves to release that onto the page, magic happens.
Totally.
Yeah.
And now if you're listening and you're like, I'm not a writer, but I'm sort of like getting a ping in my heart, there's something here, I would invite you to consider a very simple practice that's called automatic writing. And how it works is you get out a blank notebook, you get out a pen, and you set a timer for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long you want to do it. I would not do more than 20 minutes when you're starting. And I like to do it this way. I pose a question to myself. And it could be as simple as what do I need to know right now? And then you write for 20 minutes. You do not let your pen leave the paper. You could be just scribbling or drawing, but you just keep going. And through that process, you're really awakening your channeling superpowers without even realizing it. And the stuff that comes through, you'll read it and be like, holy moly, I'm so wise. And you're really just connecting with your highest self as you're going through that process, and you're revealing nuggets of information to yourself. And another practice to share too is I do this with my clients in our first module of the Mystical Living Group program. We do this, what we call the 3-day shed. And it's the same process of automatic writing, but you're working with the same topic over the course of 3 days. And you trust what comes up as you tap into your heart, because what comes up is, sometimes it's not like the really big thing that we thought we needed to shed, like a job or relationship, or it's like this thing that happened in 4th grade that you're like, I didn't even know that was, that was on my mind. And then for 3 days, you just write about that topic. And by the 3rd day, you're really in like a whole different stratosphere of understanding the meaning through your writing. And we just went through this module a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago, and the ahas, people were like, holy moly, like, I had no idea. I had no idea. And then at the end of each day, you actually burn that piece of paper because you're transmuting that energy, and you go through a practice and you say, I release the energy, I release this experience, and I welcome in the new. And we have a little mantra that goes with it. So there's just some different techniques you can use from a releasing standpoint through writing, and also just from a channeling perspective. So every one of you listening is a writer. You got it.
Everyone is.
Somewhere. And it's something just fun to explore. And let us know if you try it too. Tag us, write us a comment, and share, like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, I would even invite you to, like, I have it right here. It sits with me. I got myself a fancy pen. Like,
Oh,
there's
yes.
something,
Fancy pen.
it's almost like you're starting like a new workout routine, and you want to like
Totally.
motivate yourself to do it. So you go buy like the cute little workout outfit. It's like, oh, I want to wear it. I want to look good in it. It's like, I get myself my journal. I have my favorite kind of journal. I just keep it there. And
Totally.
something about, like, literally, if I hold this pen, it goes with me everywhere. If I hold this pen, I start to channel it. And it doesn't have to be, I mean, it is one of the easiest and best ways to start to connect. And you'll see it, like, if you just lightly are holding your pen, you pose that question, and it just starts to come through. It might be like silly little stuff at first, but the deeper you get into it, yeah, that's where, all that wisdom comes in. And I don't even do it. I mean, I don't set a timer so much as I give myself pages. I write like 3 pages because sometimes it
Oh,
just
okay.
flows.
Yeah, that's a great approach too.
Yeah, it's Julia
Yeah.
Cameron's, morning pages. I don't do them that morning. I'm too busy in the morning. I do them at night. But, sometimes it just flows. Other
Yeah.
times it's like, give yourself pages. 3 pages actually can seem like a lot. Just depends on the size of your journal. But yeah, I invite everyone to do some sort of a writing practice, even if you're not a writer. I've pushed my husband to do it, and the magic that comes in is just, you don't realize it. You don't realize what comes up. It's really
know.
powerful.
I know. It really is so powerful. Tell me a little bit about, as a mama, how do you incorporate some of these intentional practices into your family life?
My favorite thing that we do, and now my daughter starts to lead it because, my daughter's 4 and my son's 2, so they're pretty young. And I
They're
love
little.
that they are
Babies.
little. And I love that I'm really finally owning my spiritual side with them as babies.
Yeah.
So that I
Oh
can
my
start to like mold this for them as they grow up. Because I think I've
God.
talked about this a lot on my podcast and my work, is that we are all so connected. We come into this world as babies just pure and connected to source. We have all the
Totally.
wisdom within us. And it's
Yeah.
just, our surroundings, our caregivers, school. As we grow up, we kind of lose touch with that. And then I find a lot of us go through, in our 30s and our 40s, this like moment. And they used to call it the midlife crisis. I think it's more of a spiritual, like, who am
Spiritual
I moment?
awakening.
Yeah, our spiritual awakening.
Saturn
It's just,
return.
or whatever you want to call it. But
Totally.
what if we didn't have to do that? What if we could
Yeah.
curate that intuitive spark in our children from day one? So I am so
Totally.
thankful that I finally stepped into this owning and this knowing, which I've always had within me, but really owning it with my children being young. And so what I do with them is one of the fun, there's so many fun ways. And I learn from my children, watching them, their presence, exactly, their play, their creativity. I mean,
Natural.
that is pure, spiritual connection in its finest when you watch your
Totally.
children. Even
They don't need
from their
automatic writing.
they don't need automatic writing.
Yeah.
From their belly breaths to their imagination, they can just go there. I mean, even my son, like we were talking about my grandfather, my son, the minute my grandfather passed away, my son, the last time he saw him, he was maybe 7, 8 months old, so he didn't really know him. He was talking about him. He was pointing to him in the corner. He saw a picture of him when my grandfather was like 19 years old on on my phone that someone had like shared with me from our family that it didn't look like him. He goes, Papa, Papa, Papa. You know, like it was just immediate. Like they are so
Yeah,
connected. It's
totally.
amazing.
So connected.
It's
It's
like
wild.
oh, I love it. But one of my favorite things that we do is we make it fun. We make
Yes.
spirituality fun in our house. We don't really talk about it so much.
Awesome.
Like if he says, "Oh, that's Papa," I'm like, "Tell me about him." You know, we make it normal. But our favorite thing that
Yeah.
we do is we do the "I'm so great" party. I learned this from my mentor, and we
Aw.
celebrate ourselves and we do it around the dinner table, and it just makes us laugh and it gets silly, and you can't say the same thing over and over again. You just have to say it. You go around a circle
Really?
and you say 10 things that's like, I'm so great at taking out the trash. I'm so great at coloring. My daughter's favorite thing is I'm so great at drinking water, you know, and this thing, and it starts to celebrate ourselves, and it takes us out of that
Yeah.
negative mindset that we always go into. It drops us into our heart. It makes us happy. It makes
Mm.
us laugh. We have fun with it. It's fun. It's little moments like that that bring us into the
Yeah.
present moment and make us celebrate ourselves and who we are as human beings having this experience. And that is one of my favorite
Mm.
things to do with my children, but also listening to them, knowing that they have a voice, that they have a
Yeah.
vibe, and that they have a feeling, and really like respecting the fact that I don't care that they're 4 years old or 2 years old. They know what they need. They instinctually know what
Yeah.
they want. They know if they want to go to someone or if they're getting a bad feeling about something, and really
Yeah.
just allowing them to be autonomous people on their own and embracing that and listening to them and allowing them to voice whatever it is they're feeling in that
Yeah.
moment. Whether my son's in a tantrum stage and it's, oh my goodness, it's hard. But you know, I let him feel it. I just hold
Yeah.
the space for him
Mm.
and let him have it. And I'm not some Pollyanna mom by any means. I lose my
Yeah.
cool all the time, but it's taking that deep breath and just realizing,
Yeah.
you know, they are having their own spiritual experience and I'm just here to hold the space for them to grow. And
Yeah.
and when we can have those moments of fun, great, but then allowing them to feel what they need to feel, I think
Yeah.
I think is the best thing you can do as a parent.
Mm.
And listen to our
Yeah.
children. So often we just want to tell them, this is what you do. I know that's the way I grew up, but that's the way
Mm.
everyone grew up. And I'm not saying
Mm.
it's bad. I mean, I think it's just like, no, they have a voice. Everyone has a
Yeah.
voice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also shifting family systems in many ways too, because as other people in our family see how we might be parenting our children in a new way, that can be confronting, that can be triggering, or it can be an opportunity to learn and understand like okay, like I always had this no hug policy, like you don't have to hug anyone that you don't want to hug, and that was
Yeah.
really uncomfortable for
Yeah.
people in our family. They were like, wait, like what do you mean? But a kid knows, like if they run up to their grandparent and give them a big hug,
Yeah.
or they meet another relative or somebody and they're more apprehensive, like there's a reason for that, and we have to give them that experience to trust their own intuition early. Maybe we didn't have those opportunities, but when we can learn to trust our intuition, when
Yeah.
we can feel our feelings and express them, I think that's so healthy and beautiful that you're allowing that energy versus like quieting it down, shushing it, saying like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. And I get it. Like sometimes you're in the middle of the supermarket and you're like, this is
Yes.
not convenient. I mean, I don't have toddlers anymore, but remember, like in those years, you're like, and now I have so much like empathy when I see it in
I
Whole
know.
Foods, and I just like send some positive energy to the mom, and I'm like, "You're doing so great, and this is beautiful," and like you can do that too as somebody just walking by. Like you don't have to avoid it. You can like lean into that energy and be like, cheer them on and be like, "Oh my gosh," or talk to the little kid and have fun with it. And I love, love, love that you go around the dinner table and share the wins. That's something we do in the
Yeah.
Mystical Living Group program. But now I'm doing it with women who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s,
It
30s.
feels so unnatural, right?
Right. So we have this thing, it's called the love list. And it's a really pretty journal and I made it special. And that's all you do is you write in this journal every single day, just for a couple minutes. And you put all the things that you love about yourself, all the wins, like I took out the trash, whatever it is, just something that you're like, I love that. But when you can do it early from childhood and you're sharing that, like your kids are never going to need to write in a journal all the things they love because it's going to be such a natural practice for them. But for many of us, we didn't build that muscle from childhood. And like, what an amazing gift. So for all the parents listening, as we're building our own muscles, think about how can we share this like Courtney is with her kids, because it's really amazing, because then they don't have to have the midlife crisis. They don't have to have the massive spiritual awakening. I really don't think our kids are going to have those experiences because they're going to be so much more trusting of their intuition early on. So I am applauding you. I'm celebrating you.
Oh my goodness, I do. I do feel like there's a shift happening. I mean, the whole conscious parenting trend has definitely opened up the world to that. But, it can be hard. And as parents, we have so much pressure on us. Like, none of us are perfect. I still lose it. Like you said, my son just threw a tantrum. Like, he's the one that wants to get on the ground and scream and hit his head on the floor, in the middle of like this huge shopping center over the weekend. And it was just kind of like, I'm picking him up, throwing him over my shoulder, just going, shh, stop. And so it's like, we all are having those moments. People are staring at me. It looks like I'm abducting a child here. I'm just like mortified, like, let's just get home. Let's get the safe space for that.
Totally.
But I do think there is that trend. I do think there is a shift happening, a major shift happening that they're not gonna. I pray. I hope that the next generation doesn't have to go through that. Doesn't have to go through a like, who am I moment.
No,
we don't need to.
No, you don't. You don't need to go through it. Okay, so we've covered writing, we've covered parenting. Tell me if you had this crystal ball in front of you and you could know something about the future, what would you deeply desire to know?
That's a tough one because I'm the person that wants to know everything, and I want to know the end game, and I want to know exactly how it's going to end and when it's going to happen. I'm the person that will get the book and read the last page before I even start it because I have no patience. It's not,
I hope I can find it, but I literally just saw a reel talking about that this morning on Instagram where it was talking about reading the last page of the book first.
I do it all the time. It's just like, why? And as a writer, it's like, I'm not doing justice to that writer. It's like, I know better. And, and the reality is, we all know how it's going to end. We know we're going back to source. I think what I would love to know, to know not how it's going to end so much is what I signed up for. You know how we sign our soul contracts? Yeah. Really? I would love to almost have the syllabus of what I'm going. Not that I don't want to experience it, but like, okay, what did I sign up for in this lifetime so that I can, the overachiever in me, so that I can do it, right. But, have a little bit more guidance. And I know we have it available to us at all time. And I know we're not supposed to know it all, but I'm a know-it-all. I want to know it all. So I think I would love to know kind of what my soul was saying on the other side and what my higher self is saying up there so that I could incorporate it a little bit better down here. And I know we have that wisdom within us. But just more like that concrete knowledge, I think I would love.
Yeah. It's actually so interesting you bring that up because I'm talking a lot about my mystical living group program today, but I believe it's really important that we unlock our purpose as early as possible. So I have a whole module on cracking the code, and we look at it from 3 different ways. We do some inner child work to understand, like, when we come in, we know our essence so well. So tapping back into like, I love to make flower potions in the woods as a kid. Now I work with anointing oils. Maybe there's a connection there. Then we look at, we do this exploration. It's another journaling around 3 different lives. So if we were living 3 different lives, and
Yeah.
there's a whole, they're very different journaling prompts on like, okay, what would my life look like, and what are the keys there? And then for the third, we use human design, because I believe that we come here with all of these maps, like astrology and gene keys and the cards of destiny. And I believe that human design is the fastest way in, because it's just the easiest to understand. So then we like triangulate all of these things to come up with your purpose statement. And right now it's so fun because the women in the program are going through it. And we also have a private Instagram group as everyone's going through it. So there's daily support. And one of the women this weekend, she was like, oh my gosh, this is like a game of Tetris. I love it. She was like, I love Tetris as a kid, but I feel like all the pieces are like coming in and I'm getting the full picture. But really, they land with one sentence. And for me, knowing that really changed everything, because my purpose is to snap people out of their minds, drop them into their hearts so that they can experience higher states of joy, love, bliss, and ecstasy. Now I get to live my purpose every single day, but knowing it in one sentence has so much freaking power.
It's amazing. I don't know a ton about human design. I'm just starting to tap into it, and I want to know
We'll
everything.
bring you in the fold.
Oh my goodness, because I used to like think of astrology like that, and I think there's that intersection. It's all come together. But for Christmas, I got my husband a human design reading, and
So fun.
yes, with someone I interviewed on the podcast, and he went through it, and he came to me with tears in his eyes afterwards, and he
I
said to
know.
me, "This is the best gift anyone has ever given me,"
I know.
because he finally, one, felt seen,
Yeah.
two, like understood why everything had happened in his life the way it did and where he was going.
Yeah.
It gave him that purpose. Then he did his like Saturn return later, so like he's really diving into it. And I think when we can unlock those keys and that knowledge, it feels so good. I mean, even when I had this woman on my podcast talking to her about it, she did a quick little reading for me, like on the fly, and she was just kind of like, my purpose is love. And to me, it's like, really? And then, you start to bring these things together of
Yeah.
what like happened in your life and where you're going. And then it just, there's, I mean, I feel like I just kind of like, I have this like, my Italian hands want to move, like this love of, this wash over me. And it is so brilliant. I think when we can unlock our purpose, it is just, oh, magic.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
And as we close out our conversation today, what would be like one nugget of parting wisdom that you would share with the Mystical Living audience that you're like, maybe it's like a motto or a life theme or just something that's like always present on your heart, something you live by?
I think, just let it be. I've said that phrase
Let
to
it
myself.
be.
Let it be. I sing that song to myself in the college. I took a class on Beatles and their music. Let it be. I'm a control freak. I want to control everything, and nothing ever works out when you're trying to control it. It's that concept of
It
surrender.
really doesn't.
It, oh my
It
goodness.
really
It's
doesn't.
one of the hardest things. We talk about it a lot in this space, the concept of surrender.
I know.
And I don't think we really realize what it means. We can talk ourselves blue in the face until we can really feel it. And it's hard. It's really hard. So that would be my biggest piece of wisdom. Feel into that, whatever that feels like for you, just to like let it
Yeah.
be. And things are always, always going to work out in our favor. I've gone through a lot of really hard stuff in my life lately.
Yeah.
And I've stressed so much over it. I've tried to control every scenario, and it has done nothing to help it.
No.
And every single time I can surrender, or I get to the point where like, I don't know how this is going to work out,
Yeah.
it works out. It always does. It always does. So I don't
always
care
does.
what you're going through. It can be the hard, like, and it can be hard stuff. Life is scary, but
Yeah,
if you just let it be and go with the flow of the universe, it does work out. We get
yeah,
in our own way. So let it be.
totally.
I mean,
We
put that
do.
song on repeat in your head. Let it be.
Yeah. My whole reel,
Yeah.
I made this reel in like the middle of the night because there was crazy solar flares and I couldn't sleep. I was like wide awake and I was all about forcing versus flowing because when we force things, like it's really painful. It's grinding, it's
Yeah.
exhausting, it's stressful, it's depleting in our bodies and our physical vessels. And so when I'm noticing that I'm doing that, I just do a quick practice and I just say, I cancel and I choose the opposite. Or I'll say something like to source or God or however you want to tap into the infinite field. And I just say, I am surrendering this to you now. I do have this desire and I'm open to the possibilities of this or something different or something better. And I'm putting it, and sometimes I'll actually like physically hand it off. And I'm handing this over to you because I can't do it alone. I'm not, this isn't working this way. But just having that actual practice of surrender can be very powerful because so often like people are like, oh, you just need to surrender,
Yeah.
surrender. That's like really freaking hard. But when
Especially
I,
when you're in the midst of it. Like, how
yeah,
do you do it? Oh,
I know, and you're attached and you're like, but I want the red Jeep. I want this thing outside of myself. I want the situation to go exactly as I think it should go. But then we're like in our egos, we're in our minds, and it's the same thing I talk about with manifestation all the time. It's like when we're so narrowly focused, we miss all of these beautiful, incredible
yeah.
opportunities that the universe is trying to send us. And it's like, but we're just like, no, I want it this way. And we miss the miracles.
Well, and I find it because I think it's also because, when we're manifesting or when we need to surrender, it's usually around the bigger things that we want or we
Yeah,
need or we're trying to control. So that just
totally.
adds that extra layer. It's like, I can surrender to whatever I'm going to have for dinner tonight. Like, okay, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's usually, it's like, I've talked about this before. It's not like we're trying to manifest a dinner date. We're trying to manifest the love of our life. That's a much bigger thing to surrender to. So, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, giving it over when we can give it over and just embrace the knowledge that it's going to work out and it's going to be okay. And it is one of the hardest things I think we can do as human beings. I just don't think we're wired that. And I think that's one of like a
No.
universal lesson we all have. But also just like like a deep breath and a sigh into it and just like make that noise and let it go or do the
Yeah.
writing,
Let
I
it
mean,
be.
let it be. Oh my goodness. It's easier said than done, but it's
Totally.
it's what
Courtney,
we need to do.
tell us all the places that people can connect with you, listen to the podcast. We'll include it all in the show notes too.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, you can find me at CourtneyMyers.com. That's Meyers. Sometimes that gets confusing. That's where you'll
Yeah.
find, all of, the books, the courses, the mentoring, all that good stuff with me. And then, of course, we have Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, which is the podcast that's on everywhere. I love it on YouTube because we get to, be face to face and have the actual conversation. But we're also on Spotify, Apple iTunes, all the places. And that's where you'll find us. And then on social media, we're all over there, intentional.courtney on all the different sites. And, we really strive to be a platform for people to share their voice and open up and have these conversations and learn and grow together. And
Totally.
that's kind of the core of what I do is really provide that space and help people step in.
Beautiful. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on today, and I am beaming you so much love and so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to be here. I can't wait to talk to you soon.